Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see you here. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about higher education, but the title of my talk, Nudging Students to Success, Small Things That Can Make a Big Difference. So let's take a quick look at some statistics. Those of you who know me know I'm an economist, so I have to throw up a few numbers to get us started, but I'll start out easy. So this graph is showing you the percentage of students after they graduate from high school who go on to college. And I'm trying to give you a sense of time from 1975 to 2010. And each one of those lines represents a different part of the income distribution. Well, the good news is that those lines are sloping upwards. As we've gone through time, more and more people are going to college, at least getting into college. But another key observation is the gap between the low-income students and the high-income students is about as large in 2010 as it was in 1975. Now, the early 70s is a really important time. It's when we started really massive programs, billions of dollars being spent on financial aid, focusing on academic preparation, all kinds of other interventions. But even after all these decades of aid, academic supports, and so on, the gaps between the rich and poor in going to college are still just as large. And if we instead look at college success or college persistence or graduation, the gaps are even larger by income and also by gender and also by race. So why do we have this problem in the educational pipeline? Well, affordability is certainly a problem, and we know from Secretary Duncan this morning, I think the question about higher education costs may have been the one that almost stumped him. We know affordability is absolutely important. Academic preparation is also important. Students have to be prepared to go, and he cited some statistics, which actually it's a little bit higher. About 40% of first-year students go into remediation. Again, two very important issues, but realize something that's common between them is the fact that you need information. You have to go through these very complex processes in order to be able to afford college, as well as in order to be able to know what courses to take in high school in order to be academically prepared. So students, if you think about preparing for college, they have to do the right things at the right time in the right order over and over and over again over multiple years. And there are a number of problems. First of all, too little information, bad information. Students and families have misperceptions about whether aid is available. The information they receive is often very late, not until spring of their senior years of high school, which is only a few months before they might go to college. And we know information is a problem, so then we switch to the other side where we give them too much information. We have these websites that give you 300 facts on a college. But how do you determine what is the important piece of information versus not? And the processes are unclear. Meanwhile, the consequences of making a poor decision are huge. Higher education is expensive. It may be a little bit risky, particularly when we start thinking about student debt, but it's absolutely necessary for most students. And so this is just giving you a snapshot, and let's think about this college process and all the different steps that students have to go through. And even something like taking the SAT or ACT is really 5 different decisions that you have to do on certain deadlines in the right order at the right time. So I've focused some of my work looking at the FAFSA, which is the Federal Application for Financial Aid. And this is the application all families have to fill out in order to get federal aid, like the Pell Grant, many state aid programs, and most of our institutional aid. So if you're going to get aid from an institution, I want to give you a sense of what the form looked like a few years ago, 2009. So you have the first page here, ask a bunch more questions. Second page, third page, oh, and there's page 4 and 5 and 6. And this actually doesn't even include the instructions that went along with this. Now, side note, I can tell you, all of this basically boils down to your family size and your family income. And we can pretty much, with about a 0.97 correlation, tell you how much aid you're going to receive. But this is the form that we make everyone fill out. So the question of whether or not simple information could actually improve student outcomes and access to financial aid. So working with some colleagues, we started the FAFSA experiment where we were targeting families that made less than $45,000 and had a family member between the ages of 15 and 30, so a range of traditional students just preparing for college, as well as older non-traditional students. Families would go into H&R Block and fill out their taxes just as normal as they normally would, and if they qualified, we would have the tax professional ask, are you interested in learning more about higher education? Now, some subset of them were randomly assigned to the FAFSA treatment group, where we built the software that took that tax data, pre-populated the FAFSA form, which is really about half to 2/3 of the form. We asked them the remaining questions to fill out the rest of the FAFSA, which we could do very quickly. Then we gave them some individualized information, told them how much aid they would be able to receive, and we submitted it to the Department of Education if they wanted us to. We were able to do this on average about 8 minutes, including asking some background questions, doing consent forms, and so forth. So did something so small have a huge impact, or have an impact, and I've kind of previewed. That 8 minutes increased college enrollment by 7 percentage points. And when we continued to track them, it wasn't just a matter of getting people into college and then they would drop out because they weren't serious. When we tracked them 3 years later, they were 8 percentage points more likely to be enrolled 2 consecutive years, so they were actually persisting. So simplification, more information, assistance, having this huge effect. And thankfully, this work came out at a key time in Washington when you finally had the Department of Education and Treasury talking. So that's why we now do our financial aid forms a little bit differently, although I can say there's much, much more work that could be done. Let me tell you about some more recent and ongoing work looking at a slightly different question. There are so many things in higher education that are preparing that are so complicated. College savings being another one of them. There's low awareness for families about what your options are. There's some tax advantages. There's misinformation. Families think if I save, I'm not going to get any financial aid, which isn't true. And so we have a project working with the Boston Public Schools where we've done these workshops. And everyone got something. So at the bare minimum, you got an informational workshop about how to prepare both academically and financially for college. For the first treatment group, a random group, we also gave them assistance where we would help them fill out the application for the 529 account, which you can save for college and get some tax advantages. And then the last group, we also gave you an incentive. So you got information, assistance, and $50 to help you open up the account. And what I can tell you, some preliminary results after working with 1,000 families in the Boston Public Schools, information alone was not enough. And in fact, sitting down with them and helping them fill out forms was not enough. But that $50, we got about 36% of families to open the account. So getting them over that hurdle. An important part of this, though, is after families open the accounts, without any additional help for us, they started to actually engage with these accounts, and about a third of them signed up for automatic monthly contributions without any help from us. That once we got them over this hurdle, they started to engage in saving for their child's education. And the thing we're going to continue to track is this question of now that their parents are saving and they're having different kinds of conversations with their students, is there going to be a feedback mechanism into academic preparation? So to end, small things can make a big difference. We know that's true with barriers, but it can also be true with interventions. Interventions that seem very small can have huge effects. Now, it's not always the case that information alone is going to get us over that hurdle if it's very complex, but here are a couple examples where we could make some changes. The first one is similar to what I did with FAFSA, where we actually changed the form, we changed the infrastructure to make the process easier. Second option would be to use information that we have to better target students. So if you're already on free and reduced price lunch, you're going to get the maximum financial aid. Why make you fill out 2 forms? And then finally, how we can use assistant in targeted ways. So we have an ongoing project where we're texting students timely information just in time to do things like register for the SAT, to prepare for the SAT. So then we can help teachers and counselors use their time more effectively on the personal one-on-one, more complicated kinds of problems. All right, thank you.